So today we're going to replace the drain pump motor in an LG wash machine front loader. Now, what a lot of people won't tell you is the drain pump motor is actually down here behind the filter cover. So what we'll do first is take a look at the tools we're going to use. So here's the tools I'm going to use. I've got two channel lock type pliers, got a set of needle nose, got a flat blade screwdriver, and then I got a multi-blade screwdriver that has different sizes of Phillips and slots. I also have a set of nut drivers because sometimes I like to use nut drivers or sockets if the screws will work that way. The first thing you want to do when you get started is unplug your machine. After you do that, then you'll go back to the front of the machine and you'll drain it. Make sure you get all the water out of it. The first thing you're going to want to do is open your drain filter cover and go ahead and take that off. It just pulls straight off, set it to the side. Then what you're going to want to do is drain it. Now this one I've already drained, but I use some of these recycled food containers to drain it in. All you got to do is remove the plug and drain it. Now, when you get done draining it, you're going to want to take this little plug off, because when you remove the pump assembly, you're going to push this back through its opening because it's attached to the pump. This is your filter assembly. It unscrews. Make sure you drain it before you unscrew it. This is what it looks like. You can see the assembly on the back and the filter rotates. Now you don't have to take this off to change the pump. So we'll go ahead and put it back on. Now what we're going to do is undo these screws right here. And that's holding the assembly in. And then in the top up here where you see this opening, there's a slot here for you to put a screwdriver in to ease this out. So we'll go ahead and do that. So when we take a close-up look at this, you're going to see I've removed this screw. There's another one up here you're not going to see unless you get on the ground. So don't forget to remove that screw or you'll tear up the assembly. Now once you get the screws off, this just pulls right out. So go ahead and set that aside. Now I like to go ahead and take this off before I take the top of the unit off. That way I don't forget it later. So in here you can see more screws. You'll take those off once you get the front of the machine off. So the next step is going to the top of the unit. We'll go to the back and take the retaining screws off. Now one tip. You don't want to leave and lay your tools on top of the machine because it'll scar it up, especially if you're working on other people's equipment. Now what we'll do is go back to the back of the unit, and you can see here these are the retainers. There's two of them on the back. So on these top tabs, you're going to remove both the top and bottom screws on both of them in order to get the top off, because what you're going to have to do is pull the top to the back, and these clips won't allow you to do it unless they're removed. You can see how this fits on the unit. Now these screws are different sizes, so I want to show you which goes where. The smaller screw goes in the top onto the lid. The longer screw fits onto the bottom of the unit. So when you install these, make sure the small screws, the short screws on top and the long screws on the bottom. That's something I hadn't seen in any other videos on this machine. So when you're taking this top off, they don't come off as easy as most people show you, because what happens is you're going to have to go around and work it around here and break it loose. And when you get it loose, what you're going to see is you've got these plastic bushings that help hold it on. So if you go around and work it loose, you won't destroy those bushings. Now I'm standing behind the machine looking at the front. So what we're going to do is take this front panel off. On some machines, you have a screw right here you have to take off. Some of them don't have that screw. And then you got these tabs. There's several of them along the top. You're going to use a screwdriver to ease those down to loosen this part. And when you look at it from the front, this is what we're taking off. So we'll go ahead and first we'll remove the soap tray. So you push this back. Now we're looking down into the soap tray. This is the tab on this particular model. You're going to push this down and it pulls it right out. So you'll take this, drain the water out of it, and set it to the side. There are some differences in some of the models on how this releases, so you'll have to take a look at yours and see if it's the same. So once you get your soap tray out, you're going to want to remove these two screws on the right and the left. Then you'll go to the back and you'll loosen the tabs on the back of the control panel. Now we're working on getting the front panel off. We've taken the screws off on the front and the soap tray. So what I want to show you is these tabs, we have to work them so they're open. But the machines also have cleats on them here. So you're going to have to work these back and lift up on it at the same time so you don't break any of these cleats. Now there's a lot of cleats on the side that has a soap dish. So you're going to have to use a lot of caution to get this off without breaking it. I'm going to show you a trick. Some of these fronts are really tight and hard to get off. So once you get one side loose, you can take your needle nose and put under there, and that way these tabs won't re-engage while you're working on the rest of them. Now I find that this middle tab is the hardest one to get loose. So I'm going to go ahead and work that now. Now that I've got it loose, what I'm going to do is just pick it up off of there and set it on top. That way you don't have to disconnect anything. You just set it up on top. Now what we're going to do is move down to open the door. And in here is the door latch. You can do this one of two ways. I'm going to take these screws off, or you can go in here once you take the retaining spring off, and you can disconnect the wiring harness. But I find it's easier just to undo this. So I'm going to do that now. So we removed the two bolts from the door latch assembly. Now we're going down here to the bottom. Now on this bottom, you've got a spring here. And what you're going to have to do is take a pair of needle nose pliers and remove the spring. Now this spring goes up and around and helps make the watertight seal, okay? So once you remove this, then we'll take off the seal here and ease it inside. So to show you how we're going to do this, up top here you see this top lip, so you have to put your finger in this groove and work the lip back like that, okay? Now what I would do is go ahead and clean this and clean behind here while you have it off, because a lot of times dirt collects. And what we're going to do is just put this inside the machine so we can get our door off. So this is what it looks like when it's tucked behind the door. Okay, so you're just tucking it behind here. Then we'll go ahead and close the door. Now your door is not going to stay locked shut. And what we're going to do is go up to the top here, and we have several screws to take off along the top. We're going to do those last. Then what we'll do is down here on the bottom, we have a couple of screws to undo in here. So when you're taking this screw out the bottom here, I usually get cut on these machines messing with them because you have so many sharp edges. So as a warning, this surface here can be razor sharp. So this one got me, so watch out for it. So you got one right there you want to take off. So make sure you've got all this assembly here out. You undo this screw and then you do your top ones, because once you loosen this thing up, it's going to tilt forward toward you and the door is going to come open. So just be prepared for that. On my particular machine, I have 6 screws holding the front on. There's 2 here, 1 here, 2 on this side here, and 1 here. So I've left that one in place. Then you have the one that's down at the drain. Now the way this works, once I take this off, it's going to fall forward. There's tabs on the bottom of this that fit into the bottom, so there's no more screws on the bottom. So we'll lift this off and then we'll get inside to the pump. So you can see how it's going to lean forward and come off, and your door is going to open on you. Now I'm going to tell you, these edges are sharp, so make sure you're careful. Now what I'm going to do is pick straight up on this and it'll lift off of the tabs on the bottom. So you can see these tabs down here. So when you reassemble this, so you got feet, you got tabs that go in these cutouts. They're right here. So you're going to line all this up when you put it back on, which I'll show you how to do later. Now, this is our pump assembly inside here. And the white casing on the left is what holds the pump motor. The pump itself is right there where the hoses are. Now when you look inside here, the model I have, we have 2 hoses. One on the left, one on the right. And then we have a power cord going in here that we're going to have to work around to get this out. So we're going to take and remove this assembly so that we can take the motor off and replace it. Now I'm going to caution you, on some models you'll have additional hoses here depending on the features of the machine. So you can have 2 hoses as you see here, you can have 3, and I believe you can have 5. So depending on your model, you're going to have to disconnect these hoses. So what I'm going to do is take a pair of open jaw or channel locks and loosen and remove these 2 hoses from this assembly. Then we'll look at this and see if it's held on by bolts or a clip, because some models have bolts and some have clips. So I've taken and moved up the hose clamp here, and I'm just going to ease this off and lay it back here in the back. That way it's out of the way. Now I'm going to take the rear hose off. So I've eased the rear hose off of the assembly. And one reason you want to make sure you don't have any power is you're going to get a lot of water leakage, because there's going to be water inside of these hoses. So make sure you got some paper towels and that the power is off. So this particular pump is sitting on a metal frame. It has 2 bolts. You can see it right there is one of them. We're going to take those loose and remove the pump from the machine. Now you'll see the power cord coming through here. You got 2 little brackets on here that you just have to slip the wire around. There's one on the top here and one on the side. So this one here just picks straight up. And the one down in here, you just push it over and slide it around. Now, you're not going to be able to see that, I don't think, on the camera. You can kind of see right there. It's kind of blurry, but you can see it. And you're just going to have to ease that around. It's like a hook. So you take that off, and that gives you the slack where you can remove the pump. Now, these pump housing bolts are 10 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and use a 10 millimeter ratchet to pull them out. There's one on the right and then one over here kind of buried in there. Now there's a 3rd bolt right back here behind the pump near the hose outlet. So this one you can't see, you're going to have to do by feel. So it's 10 millimeter also. So you'll have to take that one loose to get this off. So this is what your 3 pump housing bolts look like. So this goes on the metal plate that holds the pump in on this particular model. Some of the other models have different ways to fasten the pump to the machine. So some of them are sliding catches, some of them are bolts. So you'll just have to look at yours and see how to do it. So this is how the pump slips out. You've got the filter straight ahead, and on the left side, the tan assembly is a cover, and that's the motor we're going to replace. So when we look at this, you can see there are two wire connectors here that you're going to have to remove. You need to remember the black one is on top and the red one is on bottom. So however your unit is wired, you should put it back the same way. So when this is oriented, this is the way it sits. So I'm going to remove those, then I'll show you how to get this cover off. So I've stood the unit on the side here so you can see it. We've got 1, 2, 3 screws we have to take off to take the unit off. Now the way this one is put on, you got a tab that it's holding the cover on. Some are set up this way and some are not. So I'm going to take these loose and slide the pump motor off, and then we'll take the cover off. So now I've pulled the pump motor off. This was the motor. You can see my impeller shaft was broke off inside. So it was dead. And then in here is the pump body. So you're going to go in here with some paper towel and rags and clean all this stuff off, because you're going to have a seal ring goes around here. So you want to get all this clean before you put your new motor on. Now you're going to want to take the cover off of here. And the way you take the cover off is you take a screwdriver, you put it under this lip, and you ease it over, and this slides down and off. Okay, so when you pry this end up right here, it's going to come off this way. And you'll put your new motor, put this on your new motor. So I'm going to encourage you, when possible, to use manufacturer replacement parts. You have less issues that way if you can find them. But I understand in today's supply chain, you may not be able to find OEM parts. So what I want to do is check it. This is the new motor. I checked the numbers, the voltages, they're the same. Before you go through the trouble of putting this all back together, you want to make sure you got the right part before you put it in. So what we're going to do is go ahead and clean the cover. And we're going to put the cover on our new part. We will clean the inside of the pump, and then we'll reassemble it, and we'll show you it reassembled. So what I did is I looked at my video, because I always take pictures and video of things before I take them apart. I made sure all my screw holes and everything was in the proper orientation. So I've gone ahead and put this back together. I haven't put the screws in it yet. Now when you're inserting your new motor onto the pump, you want to make sure you get a good seal. And you see right here, everything's lined up between the two parts. You can see the little crack in it that'll tighten up once I put the screws in it. And there is a gasket inside there that comes with the new motor. So you want to make sure you get all the old gasket out and put the new one in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the screws in this. And then what I'm going to do is put it back in and put this back together. But before I do that, I want to show you the screw positions. So you can see the rear screw that holds the bracket on the machine is right underneath of the one hose fitting. And you'll see how this pipe for your drain, it comes out the back and it comes around the unit. So it's going to have to go under here, and then it'll come out through this hole right there. So you need to make sure all that's lined up. Here I have my electrical. I will go ahead and connect that to this before I put it inside. So I've reassembled my pump, put the cover housing on. So in this photo, I've hooked the wires up, red on the left, black on the right, and then on the bottom right hand side, I've tucked it under the retainer. Now I'm going to insert it into the machine. All right, we got our pump reinstalled. I put the 3 bolts in. We reconnected the 2 hose clamps, and then we put the wire back on the wire connectors. We made sure everything is good. Got our drain hose, filter, everything's set up. Now we're going to reassemble it. So before you put your door on, make sure you take your door latch assembly and put it like this. And that way it'll stay up while you're putting the door on. That'll be an easier step for you. So we're putting our door on. We want to make sure all 3 of these tabs are lined up. So once all 3 of these tabs are in set, we can push this up. We can get our door switch in position, and then we can bolt it back together. So what I've done is put a couple of screws in the top. Now, what you got to know is this stuff is supposed to be under compression when it's in. So you're going to have to line it up. So I put a couple in the corner. I went ahead and put our switch back in. I went down here. I put our 1 bottom screw in right here. And then what I'm going to do is line these holes up along the top and get them all fastened in. And then we'll be right back. Now that we got all the screws in the front, what we did is we're going to put on the seal on the door. Now, what you do is you pull it out from inside, and then what happens is there's a flange on here. So what happens is there's a flange on here. So what you do is you pull it out like this and you put it over the flange. And what you have to do is work that all the way around till you get it on. And once you get it on all the way around, check it, and then we'll put the spring on. The way the spring goes on is you go up here to the top, and there's a groove in here. And the spring is going to sit in that groove just like this. Now the worst part of the job is putting this spring back on the seal. There's 3 ways to do this, and the first 2 are painful. Now when you line this up, this spring has to be at the bottom here. Now the problem is you need to spread that spring 3 or 4 inches to get this to work. You can buy a tool to do it off of Amazon that's between $10 and $20. That's what I would recommend. You can take a wrench, you can take a vise, stretch this spring in the vise, and use zip ties through the holes right here, and zip tie it stretched to a wrench. That way it's expanded. You can put your spring on, get it in the groove, and then cut your zip ties, and it will work. The other way is trying to put it in by hand and stretching it with 2 needle nose pliers. That almost never works. So I would buy the tool. So this is the tool you need. And what it does is it expands that spring so that you can get it back on the seal. This tool is available for $12.50 delivered to your door on Amazon. You can search for it, and make sure when you order any parts for repair on a front-loading wash machine, you buy one of these tools. Because a lot of people actually break this spring trying to get it back on because it's so hard to expand. They put it in a vise, or they use 2 pair of channel locks or vise grips to expand it, and they destroy the spring. Save yourself the hassle and get this $12.50 tool. Now when you look at this tool, it has 2 indentations on each side. And what happens is you slip this on, and it catches in those notches. So with the spring inserted into the tool, captured by the notches, this is how much the spring can extend and needs to extend to actually put this on the machine. That's why it's so hard to install this part. Now when your spring's installed back on the seal, it's going to look like this, and you can see right in here there's a groove that the spring goes in. So save yourself the problem. Buy the tool when you buy the replacement parts. So we went ahead, we put our screws in. Now we just line up our soap dispenser, push in. Make sure you push down on your release button, and it should work fine. So just try it to make sure. Now what we're going to do is put the top on it. So when we put our top on, remember these cutouts go to the front, screw holes in the back. Now you're going to have to work it on around these guides, okay, because you got guides on here. So what you're going to do is put it on this front edge, work it in. So everything's fitted back together. Took a little bit of working around, get everything lined up. Now when we step around to the back, I'm going to pull this out more from the wall. But what we got to do is make sure these screw holes are lined up on both sides. These are our cleats that are going to hold the top on. Remember, you got the two little tabs in the bottom that line up on pre-punch holes. And the way the screws work, long screws on top, short screws on the bottom. So this is how they go in. Short screw on the top. And these top two pegs go in the top of the unit. And when you look at these, the short screw goes on top and the long screw goes through the bottom hole. So don't forget that. If you don't, it won't work right. So there we go. We got both rear cleats on. They're fastened up. So once you get everything put back together, the seal in place, you're going to want to do a test load and look at the machine to make sure nothing leaks and you don't have any problems. We're running our test load. We checked everything for leaks. Everything looks good. So see you on the next video.